Uh, so welcome students. There are at the moment 17 of you in the class. So I suppose we can start with the lecture which has to be done today. And let me just share the screen with you. So in the morning today we were at this particular point, and the slide which is in front of you, basically it represents a square matrix which happens to be symmetrical also.
Screen
And
not visible, sir.
the moment it might appear that all the terms are going to be difficult to remember, but in fact
Hello, sir. Sir, slide is not visible.
that all the shape functions which are appearing on the left hand side, that is the stiffness matrix, all the terms happen to be differentials. I mean, phi 1 is a differential, phi 2 is also in terms of a differentials and things like that. And the second thing is that um, the row and the column number, if supposing you want to have an expression for the term which appears in the second row first column, so second row means 2, first column means 1, so the term appearing here itself is going to be d phi 1
Hello, sir.
and d phi 2. So that means the row and the column number themselves correspond to the terms which are going to be present in the stiffness matrix. So there is
Hello,
uh,
sir.
very simple logic in understanding, in remembering these terms. Apart from this, you need to remember only half of the terms because this obviously is a square matrix and it is symmetrical as well. So uh, symmetry itself means that the terms which are present in the upper half, they are going to be repeated in the lower half also. So अगर आप आधी terms याद रखते हैं, so the rest of the
Hello,
terms can
sir.
automatically be remembered. So this is what
Hello, sir.
the equations are going to appear like. In short, they are going to be written as kx is equal to f. And in the following slide, we are actually going to solve these equations to get the solution.
Sir, your slides are not visible, sir.
And this is a same equation in form of a matrix Kij, where I represents the row and J represents the column number. So Kij is equal to x multiplied by d phi I dx into d phi j by dx. So I and j simply represents the row number and the column number. And this is the expression for the force in the ith equation. So there happen to be two integral terms, which is the first and the third term. And the second term is the boundary term, which has to be evaluated at the boundary of the domain. And in short, we simply write the equations in notation form also.
Hello, sir.
And this is the expansion of the boundary term. The term which is in the bracket, that is x multiplied by du by dx into phi I. This has to be evaluated at the two endpoints, and then they are supposed to be uh, subtracted. And also notice that we have prescribed a term for flux at one of the endpoints, that is xb. It is only the xa term which is not known, but the term at xb is a known quantity, and that we can substitute over here. In the next slide, Just a moment. Hmm. In the next slide, we will take the example by taking three terms in the polynomial. We are actually going to take a polynomial which is going to contain three terms, and then we are going to repeat all the steps to solve the problem numerically. The value of n is 3 because we are taking three terms in the polynomial. If n is 3, the polynomial is going to be given by a1 plus a2x plus a3x square. This is a quadratic equation because there is a term of x square over here, and the three terms a1, a2 and a3 are the unknowns. One thing should be mentioned over here, that we are solving this particular equation for a1, a2 and a3, but a1, a2 and a3 do not represent the temperature at the endpoints. They simply are the coefficients to the equation. Sometime ahead, that is maybe tomorrow, we are actually going to modify this polynomial. We are going to modify the form of the polynomial in which a1 and a2 actually are going to represent the values of temperature at the nodes. For the time being, this is simply a polynomial where a1, a2 and a3 do not represent the temperature at any specific location. For this equation, the trial functions are phi1 is equal to 1, that is coefficient of a1, phi2 is equal to 2, that is coefficient of a2, and phi3 is equal to x square, that is coefficient of a3. Since there are three unknowns, a1, a2 and a3, we have three trial functions given by phi1, phi2 and phi3. This stiffness matrix is given by this formula, which requires the differentials of the shape functions. Therefore, d phi1 by dx is equal to 0 because phi1 is 1. d phi1 by dx is going to be 0. Similarly, d phi2 by dx is going to be 1, and d phi3 by dx is going to be twice x. Once these three differentials are known, we can evaluate all the terms in the stiffness matrix, and they are going to be evaluated in the next slide. For I to be 1, we are going to have three values of j, that is 1, 2 and 3, and we are going to develop expressions for k11, k12 and k13. So k11 is x multiplied by d phi1 by dx into d phi1 by dx, integral of the entire term. And since d phi1 happens to be 0, k11 itself is going to be 0. For k12, which is x multiplied by d phi1 by dx into d phi2 by dx, this again is going to be 0 because d phi1 dx happens to be 0. And the last term, k13 is equal to the expression on display. This also is going to be 0. Please notice that since the stiffness matrix happens to be symmetrical, if we have evaluated K12, it means that we have evaluated K21 also. Similarly, if we have evaluated K13, we have evaluated K31 also. So we are taking the advantage of symmetry to actually reduce our work done. Then for I to be 2, we are going to evaluate K22, which is x multiplied by d phi 2 by dx into d phi 2 by dx. And we have actually evaluated that particular expression. Similarly, we have evaluated K23 also. Please notice over here that once we have evaluated K23, we have evaluated K32 also. And for the last value of I, that is for I to be 3, we are going to have K33, which is on the display. So with the help of all these expressions, in fact, we have evaluated only 6 expressions given by K11, K12, K13, K22, K23, and K33. By evaluating only these 6 expressions, we have evaluated evaluated the all 9 stiffness terms of the stiffness matrix. Now coming to the expressions on the right, that is the force matrix given by this term. At this place, we have divided the force matrix in 2 parts. We are evaluating only the term which has to be integrated. The boundary terms are going to be evaluated in the next slide. So we have for I to be 1, this expression, since phi 1 is known, it has a value 1. We can easily do the integration to find the value of F1. For I to be 2, we have this expression, and for I to be 3, we have this expression on display. Now the second part of the force matrix given by this expression, this is x multiplied by du by dx into phi I to be evaluated at xb, and x multiplied by du by dx into phi I evaluated at xa, and then we are taking the subtract of these two. For I to be 1, this expression is going to be what is on the display. And since similarly, for I to be 2 and for I to be 3. Just a moment. Hanji. Coming back to the discussion, since we know the value of x multiplied by du by dx at x is equal to xb, and since phi 1 is also known to us, we can very well evaluate the first term in the brackets. Similarly, coming to I is equal to 2, we know the value of x multiplied by du by dx at x is equal to xb. Phi 2 is also known to us. We can evaluate this term also, and similarly we can evaluate the first term in the third equation also. Only the terms which are supposed to be evaluated at xa, they are going to be unknown. Now arranging all the terms of the equation together, we get this equation on display. We have plenty of zeros in the stiffness matrix on the left. A1, A2, and A3 are the three unknowns. Then comes a column matrix containing three terms. First term is -2, second is -2 log 2, and the third is -2. This we have actually evaluated. And then the boundary terms are going to be substituted, and they are going to be tackled in two different ways. Okay. In fact, we have already been discussing how the flux term is going to be tackled, but just for the sake of continuity, we have this particular slides. The two boundary terms are going to be tackled in two different ways, out of which one is going to be constrained and the other is going to be unconstrained. In fact, the second boundary term is going to be in form of a unconstrained boundary condition. So we are starting with the second boundary condition first, and the first boundary condition is going to be tackled later on. The term minus x du by dx to be evaluated at xb appears at three places. So we simply substitute it there. The equation thus becomes, we are going to substitute the value at these three locations, and the resulting equation is going to be this thing. So the problem now is that these three equations can be solved only if the corresponding right-hand sides are known. And the thing is that we do not know the value of the flux at x is equal to 1. And the value of flux at x is equal to 1 appears in all the three equations. So logically it means that the three equations cannot be solved. It will be seen later that application of flux boundary condition in such a manner will only satisfy the boundary condition in an approximate manner. I'm just trying to explain this particular paragraph. In the following slides, we will see that even though we have substituted the value of flux in the three equations, still we are going to see that once the solution has been achieved, we are going to notice that the value of flux at x is equal to xb is not going to come to be the same value what we have applied in the equation. जब एक बार हम सॉल्यूशन निकाल लेंगे तो हम देखेंगे कि फ्लक्स की जो वैल्यू हमारे पास सॉल्यूशन में आती है वो वैल्यू वो नहीं है जो हमने एक्चुअली में वहां पर इक्वेशन में सब्स्टिट्यूट करी थी. और ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है, दिस इज गोइंग टू बी क्लियर in the following lectures. Now coming to the first boundary condition, you have already noticed that there is no term in the equations where the first boundary condition can be substituted as we have substituted the second boundary condition. So the first boundary condition is going to be substituted in the trial function itself. The trial function enters the solution is not constrained to satisfy the flux boundary condition in any manner. Thus, the flux boundary condition is unconstrained. Now, application of the first boundary condition that is prescribed at x is equal to 1. The value of u happens to be 2. This is the equation on display. Note that there is no term in the system equation where we can apply this boundary condition. Thus, we apply this boundary condition to the trial function itself. Thus, we apply this boundary condition, that is the first boundary condition, to the trial function itself. As a result, what we get is a constraint equation of this type. Once you apply the first boundary condition to the trial function itself, what you get is a constraint equation, which in fact is a fourth equation in your solution procedure. 3 equations which were already developed previously, and this happens to be the fourth equation. And these happen to be the 4 equations. The first 3 equations were developed as a process of finite element method, and the fourth equation is developed when we apply the boundary condition term to the trial function itself. So this basically means that we have 4 equations and there are only 3 unknowns, A1, A2 and A3. In fact, there is a fourth unknown also, which is appearing on the right hand side of the equations given by x multiplied by du by dx into phi 1. This is the fourth unknown which is appearing on the right. But in the following lecture, we will see that this term simply is going to disappear. In the following lecture, following slides, we are going to see that this particular term, which is flux evaluated at x is equal to 1, this is simply going to disappear. So what we are going to do is that we are taking a general procedure. So we have 3 equations, as we had 3 equations in the earlier, and we have a fourth equation, that is the constraint equation, that is slightly modified to give you the value of A3. So once this has been done, the next steps are going to be evident in the next slide. These are the fourth equations. Substituting equation number 4 in 1, 2 and the third equation and rearranging them gives this equation and these 3 equations. These 3 equations have simply been obtained when you substitute the value of A3 in the first, second and the third equation, and the result of this is that you have 3 equations now, but they happen to be functions only of A1 and A2 now. The net result is that you have 3 equations, but the 3 equations now are functions of only A1 and A2. This gives 3 equations with 2 unknowns. In the next step, we manipulate the equations and then we'll delete the third equation. The steps are as follows. So kindly read these steps carefully, because this is mathematics and mathematics cannot be described, it cannot be explained in words. So the procedure which has to be followed is illustrated in terms of equations. Multiply the third equation by C1 by C3 and subtract the first equation from it. Similarly, multiply the third equation by C2 by C3 and subtract the second equation from it. When you carry out these two steps, this is going to give you two equations which are going to be on display now. These are the two equations. And why these particular steps have been carried out? They have been carried out in this particular specific manner because this results in two equations having two unknowns, and the square matrix which is going to be on the left hand side is going to be symmetrical. The square matrix, obviously it is of size 2 by 2. The square matrix in the left hand side happens to be symmetrical. The entire logic behind this step is that we now have a symmetrical matrix as we did in the starting. These two equations are solved for A1 and A2, which can be used to get the value of A3 from the constraint equation. As already has been discussed earlier, symmetrical matrices have an important role in finite element method. More on this is going to be discussed in the future classes. Now, another advantage of these messy steps is that the flux term evaluated at point x is equal to 1 present in the right hand side of the three equations, which obviously is unknown, gets cancelled out. So this is another advantage with which we get when we manipulate the four equations in the method according to the manner which we have just explained. So if we carry out the entire procedure and solve the equations for the value of A1 and A2 and then use the constraint function to get the value of A3, this is the polynomial which you get. And please note that this particular equation simply represents the variation of temperature, the variation of the unknown within the domain. It does not give the value of the unknown at xa or xb, for which you have to substitute the value of x in this particular equation to get the value of the unknown. So that is the additional work which you have to do. In the future lecture, we are going to use a slightly modified form of this expression of this polynomial, in which the terms such as A1 and A2 actually are going to represent the temperature at some specific locations. So that is an exercise for the to be done in the future classes. This is the polynomial which we have obtained. Repeating the process with the various terms. If we had only one term in the expression, we get this equation. If we take two terms, this is the solution. If we have three terms, obviously, this is the solution. These successive solutions are going to be plotted once I get the assignment from you students. I have already given the assignment to you all on the previous turn, that is yesterday. Yesterday it was told to you that a term is going to be replaced by your roll number, and all these methods which have been discussed in the class in this particular chapter, they are supposed to be applied to obtain various solutions, and then all those solutions are supposed to be plotted so that we can compare the results and obviously the corresponding accuracies among themselves. So all the plots are going to be plotted once I get the solution from your side, and this particular activity should be over within next 1 or 2 days. Now there are some terminologies corresponding to the boundary conditions. A boundary condition is an equation relating the values of u and oblique or sum of its derivative from order 1 to 2m minus 1 at points of the boundary. Okay, I'm repeating this particular statement. A boundary condition is an equation relating the values of unknown, that is u, with sum of its derivative. The order of differential of the derivative can be anywhere from 1 to twice m minus 1, and that is going to be given at the boundary condition. And in this particular expression, the term m represents the order of the differential in the governing equation itself. That is, for a second order equation, the value of m is going to be 2. A boundary value problem of order twice m needs m boundary conditions to be specified at every point of the boundary. A boundary value problem of order twice m needs m boundary conditions to be specified at every point in the boundary. For the example which we have just seen, we were solving a governing equation which was second order. Since it was second order, it means that the value of m is going to be 1. Therefore, one boundary condition is supposed to be prescribed at every point in the boundary. Therefore, we have prescribed one value of the boundary condition on the left, and we have prescribed one value of the boundary condition on the right end of the domain. On the left, we have prescribed temperature as a boundary condition, and on the right, we have prescribed the flux as a boundary condition. So this is what this particular point number 2 is going to mean. Now these boundary conditions are classified into principal categories. जो बाउंड्री कंडीशंस हैं उनको दो तरीके से वो दो तरीके की होती हैं. One of them is essential boundary condition and the other happens to be natural boundary condition. For those who have been attentive in this lecture, I can straight away tell to those students, एक boundary condition जिसके लिए constraint equation develop होता है, that is known as the essential boundary condition. तो constraint equation इस डेवलपमेंट में आज के लेक्चर में हमने टेम्परेचर के लिए डेवलप करा था. सो टेम्परेचर बिकम्स द एसेंशियल बाउंड्री कंडीशन. लेकिन फ्लक्स के लिए हमने कोई भी कंस्ट्रेंट इक्वेशन डेवलप नहीं करा है, सो दैट बिकम्स द नेचुरल बाउंड्री कंडीशंस. सो दिस इज हाउ नेचुरल एंड द एसेंशियल बाउंड्री कंडीशंस आर गोइंग टू बी decided. Now coming to essential boundary condition, This is an equation relating the value of u and oblique or to any of its derivative up to the order m-1 at points in the boundary. So this basically is a equation. Thus, they involve lower order derivatives. They are also known as Dietrich, kinematic, displacement, or geometric boundary conditions. They are also known as Dietrich, kinematic, displacement, or geometric boundary conditions. Now, talking in terms of solid mechanics, these essential boundary conditions usually correspond to displacement and sometimes slopes. In heat transfer problems, essential boundary conditions correspond to temperature, and in some other formulations, they are simply referred as potentials. Now coming to natural boundary conditions, the word essential is a typing mistake over here. It should have been only natural boundary condition. It is an equation relating the value of u or its derivative up to an order m to twice m-1 at points in the boundary. So this is what the natural boundary condition has its meaning. They involve terms of higher order derivatives. They are also known as Newman, dynamic, force, or stress boundary conditions. In terms of solid mechanics, they correspond to forces, stresses, and displacements. In heat transfer, they correspond to heat flux, and in potential value problems, they correspond to gradient of the potential. The two cases for m to be 1, that is the second order equation, and m to be 2, that is the fourth order differential equation, cover all practical applications in engineering. This we have already discussed. In engineering, the only differential equations which we find happen to be second order differential equations, which have applications in heat transfer, fluid flow, axial deformation of a bar, and some other cases of solid mechanics. And the fourth order differential equation find applications in deformation only. For m to be 3, we are going to get a sixth order differential equation, and this finds application in cases where adhesives are used. Second order differential equation has m to be 1. The examples are elasticity, heat conduction, acoustics, fluid dynamics, and electromagnetics. For m to be 2, this is the fourth order differential equation. There is a typing mistake over here also. Examples are beam theory, plate, and shell theories. So we are basically going to apply the finite element theory to examples from elasticity, where we are going to discuss plane stress, plane strain, axis symmetry, and three-dimensional cases. Then we are going to study heat conduction, acoustics also, fluid dynamics, and electromagnetics. Then coming to the fourth order differential equation, where we are going to study the beam theory, plates, and shell theories. And for those students who have not studied beam theory, plates, and shell in their BTech classes, they are advised to revise or to go through a suitable book which they can find to cover at least the theoretical part, because some equations from these chapters are going to be taken directly in FEM theory. We are not going to derive the equations, but we are going to derive the FEM formulations of it. तो जिन बच्चों को ये थ्योरीज नहीं आती हैं, they are advised to refer a standard strength of material book. Of course, these equations, these chapters are not given in the book by Dr. S.S. Ratan. You will have to refer a advanced book for these topics. So kindly do it as soon as possible. The classification of boundary conditions as essential or natural depends on the order of governing equations. It is completely independent of the method used to solve the differential equations themselves. Now, in the next lecture, this is where we are going to conclude lecture for this particular session. In the next lecture, we are going to divide the domain into number of elements. We are going to divide the entire domain into one element first. Then we are going to divide the domain into two elements, then four elements, and so on. And then we will see how this particular finite element is going to be applied to the problem which we have taken in the present discussion. So I suppose this is all for today's lecture, and I might be taking a third lecture somewhere at 4 o'clock today. I might be taking the information for which is going to be given to you in your WhatsApp group. So kindly have a look over there also. Okay, then we can conclude now, and we will meet afterwards. Thank you.